Hello, in this video we're going to set up the core of our complex network. So on the screen we have at the moment is the core router design we're going to use as the demonstration that we can, the demonstration virtual network that we're going to be using to demonstrate this network. So we're designing this so it can all fit on one computer, and after we came up with this core design, obviously we've got more computers hanging off branch office 1, branch office 2 and the head office. We then made up a new one of these with all the numbers on it. So I'll just show that, it's here. And so now we've got the branch office 1 router, the branch office 2 router. We have a switch, branch office 1 server switch with a branch office 1 domain controller 1, which will have Active Directory, DNS, print, distributed file systems on it. And we've got a branch office 1 client switch upon which we can hang a workstation. Now this is a dotted line because it's movable between the branch office 1, branch office 2 and also the head office. So we'll just install one but move it around. So in branch office 2 we've just got the actual network cards and the switches in place with no machines on it. Like I said, the workstation can be moved to it later on when we want to set up things like NAT on the router. And also to check to make sure we've got connectivity between the various subnets and out to the internet. Okay, so that's the two branch offices. Obviously this internet router, or could be called the internet service provider, either one, doesn't really matter. This allows two separate networks between the branch offices and the head office. That means they've got an IP address that's in a completely different subnet. So we've got a VPN tunnel going from both of these routers from our branch offices to the head office router. The subnet here is 10.0.10.0/24, and this one's 10.0.2.0/24. So these are two different subnets. That's 10.0 and that's a 2.0. And within the branch offices themselves, this one's got a 192.168.10 subnet. That's for the whole network, 10.0/24. And what we do is we break it up into subnets depending on whether it's a client or whether it's a server. So we've actually made 4 subnets. So we've stolen 2 bits, which allows 4 networks. So instead of being a /24, it's now a /26. So the same thing in the branch office 2. It's 192.168.20.0/24 for the whole subnet, but we break it up into 2 subnets. So we're using a /26 and breaking it up into 4 subnets. Now it doesn't look like we need 4 subnets there because we've really only got 2 network cards. But we could also have wireless in here as well. So it could have a wireless client. And because the wireless client could either be a staff member or could be a member of the public, i.e. a guest, that guest network is the 3rd subnet that we would need in here. Now we're not actually going to show that in the branch offices. We're just keeping this sort of same convention for the IP addresses as what we were using in the head office. And the head office has sort of everything in it. So in the head office we've got the router, but we've got 4 network cards. We've got the one that goes out to the internet and handles the VPN tunnels. And then we've got 3 internals. So we've got a head office demilitarized zone switch, off which we're hanging a web server, so it's running IIS. And so people from anywhere, from outside, from other branch offices should be able to get to this web server. We've got another subnet here. So that's first subnet, second subnet. and this is the head office server switch, upon which we've got the head office domain controller 1 and head office domain controller 2. They're both going to be Active Directory servers, both with DFS. This one's going to have DNS and print, and the domain controller 2 is also going to have the WSUS, or Windows Software Update Service, on it. On our third subnet, we've got our clients. Okay, we've got our client networks here. So this is head office client switch, upon which we're going to hang a web workstation. And the thought is also that we might have wireless in this sort of area, and we've got guests in their own subnet and staff in that subnet as well. And this is what would normally be hanging off another network card in both the branch offices as well, assuming that we're going to have provision for guests at the different medical practices. So in the head office, we're going to need exactly 4 subnets. So 1, 2, 3 for the staff workstations and 4 for the guest machines that'll go out to the internet. Hence, while we've got a 192.168.0 subnet, 0.0/24, we break that up into 4 subnets by stealing the 2 bits and making it a /26. That gives us the 4 subnets of 64 IP addresses, 62 usable. Okay, so we followed that sort of same structure over to the 2 different branch offices. Now, what we're doing here is we're really got one branch office with a domain controller in it that will be linking to the domain controllers over in the head office. So we're going to have Active Directory replication between all of the domain controllers. We don't need another domain controller over in branch office 2. Just having one domain controller in another branch office demonstrates that capability of Active Directory replication through a VPN tunnel to another subnet, to another branch office. The reason why we've got 2 branch offices is that we want to be able to show that we've got multiple VPN tunnels can terminate on the head office, and that's purely the only reason. So this second branch office doesn't have much in the way of real machines in it. We can, as I said, put the workstation in there, and we'll do that for testing to make sure we go through VPN tunnels and out to the internet, and we can set NAT on here and things like that. So anyway, this is the structure. That's the subnet that we're going to use, the IP addresses. So on all of these, we've got, for example, this is a 10.0.2 subnet that's hanging off switch 2, and the .1 address is on the internet or ISP router, .10 matching the 10 subnet, .20 matching the 20 subnet. So this is 10.0.2.10. This is 10.0.2.20. The IP address there, and then internally we've got .1 for the 0 subnet, and we've got a 129, which is the IP address, the first usable IP address in the 10.128 subnet, /26. And so we've got the same sorts of things in the head office. That's a 1, so this is a 2. In the 10.0.10.0/24 subnet. So .1 is on the internet router, .2 is on our head office router. And then we've got the first usable address in each of the subnets is allocated to the network card that's on the router, and then follow on from there. So this is 65, that's 66, that's IP address .1, .2, .3. So in here we've got the 128 subnet, 0.128, so the first usable is .129. So that's on the network card that's on the router. And then 130 is the next major infrastructure thing, which is going to be this router here, which represents the wireless. And whether this is actually internal, which it can be at the moment, it can be internal, and if we get back to one of the computer labs back at TAFE, we could actually bridge this out to a second network card and hang a real real wireless off it, and then we can actually log in as guests or staff and have it all come back in. That's okay. So assuming that we can't and that we're still isolated, then we can put a router in here and make these two different subnets based on, and this thing acts as a router. And okay, so that's all the different subnets, the IP addresses. Obviously the workstation's going to get a DHCP address off this card here. When we plug into either of these places here, then there'll be a DHCP on the network card at the router for that particular subnet. So that's an explanation of that network. Let's fire up a VirtualBox. Here it is. Let's start making some of this core network. So we'll start probably with the internet router and then make the other ones. Okay, so we're going to import an appliance. Import an appliance. I'm going to go find it. It's on my OneDrive in the VM resources in the OVAs. So there's a zero shell 395 latest version, and we'll go next. And I'm going to call this one internet, like I've got in the diagram. Internet. We've currently got 2 network cards. We'll later on make that 3. So in here I'm going to change this to internet.vdi because we're ticking to import this as a VDI. We're not changing the primary group yet. Well, later on we'll put all of these things in a group to make them separate. And currently I want to generate a new MAC address for all network cards. And so let's import it. This doesn't actually take very long. There it is. So what we might do is just create the other routers. So we've got the internet router, create the other routers, and then we'll go and configure them all. So let's go File, Import another appliance. Same deal. VM resources, OVAs. There's the zero shell. We'll go next, and I'll make this one the head office HO router. There we go. So I'll change that to HO router .vdi, and so yeah, we're not changing that yet. We'll change the MAC address on all network cards, and we'll go next. Let's import it. Okay, so we'll do the same for the branch office 1 and the branch office 2. So import an appliance. Sorry, well, go down here. OneDrive, resources, the zero shell. And we'll go next. On that, we'll change this to branch office 1 router. Change that to branch office 1 router. And not yet. Change the MAC address for all network cards. Make sure it's imported as a VDI and go import. Failed to import. Okay, so okay, I forgot to put the VDI on the end of this thing here. .vdi. Okay, so there's .vdi. Okay. I think you have to actually click out of this before it actually takes. Generate new MAC addresses. Okay, so now do an import. Yep, okay. So next one, import an appliance. Oops, too far. OVAs, and there's my zero shell. Next. So this is going to be branch office 2 router. Branch office 2 router .vdi, and we'll make sure we click out of it this time, and then we'll generate new MAC addresses for all network adapters and go import. Okay, so what we've done is we've created all of the routers, these 4 routers here. I'm just going to move that internet one down underneath it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group all these things together. I'll hold the shift key down, right mouse click and group them all. And I'll just call this like a demo. GWMP is the name of the organization. So let's go rename the group. So GWMP demo. Okay, so that's the name of the group, which means, you know, we can hide it or open it. Okay, so what we need to do now is put the IP addresses on all of these things and start it all up properly. The internet router being the most important one. It's going to get a DHCP address from we're going to bridge it to a physical network card, and it'll get an IP address from somewhere out here. And then we'll set the one address for each of these 2 different subnets. So I think what I might do, yeah, we'll do that first. Let's get that all in place. This will start, yep, there it is. I sort of want this picture visible so we can see what we're doing as well. Okay, that shows that it's started up okay. What I've done is I've started it up, but I haven't actually put this 3rd network card in. So that's a bit of a minus. yes, let's shut it down, put the 3rd network card in and do it properly. So that was my fault there. Okay. So on this one, we need to have a 3rd network card. Okay, the first network card, we need to make sure it's bridged. The 2nd network card needs to go to an internal network. We'll call this one S1. Okay. And our 3rd network card, we need to enable connected to an internal network, and this is going to be S2. So let's just call this S2 and go OK. So now we've got 3 network cards. We should be right to start that one up. Okay. Okay, so if we go bottom right of the command menu, I for IP manager, we can see that we've got a dynamic on Ether 00, but we don't have an IP address yet. That's interesting. Wonder why. Devices, network. It's bridged to, there's two network connections. It should be the first one. That should be okay. Okay, maybe we just didn't give it time. So quit back out, back in again. Yeah, it's got an IP address. Didn't give it time to actually request and actually get an IP address. So you can see the IP address here is for Ether00 is 192.168.1.62, and that's what's going to get us out to the internet. So the second Ethernet card, Ether01, already has a static IP address, but it's wrong. So we're going to hit M to modify that IP address. And this is the one that's connected to S1 or switch 1, which is over here. So this needs to be 10.0.10.1/24. Okay, so interface that, modify the IP of the first card. Okay, IP to modify. It's interesting, came up with a few errors there. So the IP address is going to be it's going to be 10.0.10.1, and the network mask is going to be 255.255.255.0/24 subnet. Status is going to be up, and so obviously because of the errors it didn't actually happen. So let's try that again. So let's go modify ETH01. That's the IP address we want to change, number one. Okay, it worked this time. I must have put something wrong the previous time. So 10.0.10.1. It is a /24 subnet, and its status is up. Okay, so now we've got the right IP address on there. Let's do the second network card, which is this one here. So it's going to be 10.0.2.1. So let's go add. It's back across to here. A to add for ETH02. The IP address is going to be 10.0.2.1, and the IP address is 255.255.255.0. Okay, so we've now got all the correct IP addresses in there, and I'll quit out to the main menu. I'm going to run an S for a shell prompt. I'm just going to make sure I can get out to the internet, so I'm just going to ping 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS server. Yep, gets there, that's quite fine. So it gets out to the internet. Control C to stop it, Control D back to the main menu. So let me minimize that. Let's go to the head office router, which is this router here. We need 4 network cards, so let's click on that and make 4 network cards. The first one is this card connected to switch 1, so it's going to be connected to an internal network. Switch 1, there it is. Our next adapter is to an internal, but it's going to be HODMZ, then HO7, HOCL. So let's go head office DMZ. Use that switch. Yep, that's it. So adapter 3 will enable, we'll call this one an internal network, and it's going to be head office SRV for server. And adapter 4, I'm going to enable that, make it an internal network, and make it head office clients. Whoops, clients, that'll do. Okay, so there's our 4 networks. So we can start this thing up now and put the right IP addresses on it and continue on. Okay, so let's start it. Okay, so we're in. Let's go I for IP Manager. The first one is set to dynamic. We need to turn that off because the first card is actually this one here. It's going to have a static IP address of 10.0.2, sorry, 10.0.10.2, this IP address here. So let's go H for dynamic, ether 00, and disable it. Disable. It's going to be disabled. ED. Unmatched. Okay. Try it again. It's because I used the up arrow and down arrow. It got confused. It's pretty fussy in some cases. So now it's disabled. There's nothing on ether 00. So I'm going to add an IP address to that. Ether 00. The IP address is going to be 10.0.10.2. The subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. And the default gateway for this is actually going to be this IP address here. That's the way out to the internet. So we've got a default gateway. Let's press G. And the 10.0.10.1 is my default gateway, which is the IP address of the internet router. Okay, so let's go to the next network card, which is the HODMZ. It's plugged into that, so we need this IP address of 192.168.0.65 /26. Okay, so let's go. Well, we've already got an IP address on ether 01, so we need to change that to from 3.1 to 0.65. Okay, so let's go M to modify, ETH01. That's the one we want to modify. We want to go to 192.168.0.65, which is the first usable IP address in the second subnet of all the different subnets. And that's going to be a 255.255.255.192 as a /26. Okay, enter. Status is up. So we've got the correct IP address on that. So the next card, ether02, on here is going to be this HO server. So it's going to have 192.168.0.1 /26. So let's go A to add for ETH02 subnet, and we want to add in 192.168.0.1, and it's 255.255.255.192. Yep. Okay. So that's all the right IP addresses on that. And then the fourth network card, or ETH03, is going to be this plugged into the head office clients. So it's going to have an IP address of .129. Okay, so let's go A to add ETH03. And the IP address is 192.168.0.129, which is the first usable IP address in that subnet. And 255.255.255.192 makes it a /26 subnet. So now we've got all the right IP addresses in there. What we want to do is just make sure that this machine here can actually ping this machine. Now, it won't be able to ping out to the internet until we actually set NAT up along here. We might be able to ping 1.62, I think is the IP address of this. So we might be able to ping that, but no further until we actually put NAT on here. Okay, so let's try that. Let's quit back to the main menu, and we'll go S for shell prompt, and we're going to go ping 10.0.10.1. Okay, it says host unreachable, Control C. Okay. 10.0.10.1. Should be right. Okay, let's type in exit. Let's go back to shell prompt. Sorry, let's go back to IP manager. 10.0.2 10.0.10.2 is the IP address there, and 10.0.10.1 is correct. Okay, so let's just check that our Ether00 network card is plugged into switch 1. Plugged into switch 1, it is. We'll go to advanced, cables connected, that's okay, so that's good. Okay, so let's just go back to our internet router and do a I for IP manager. So on our second network card on this, it says that it's 10.0.10.1 and it's a /24 subnet, so that's good. Let's check to make sure that it's plugged into the right switch. So this is the second network card. Plugged into switch 1, internal network, and cables connected. Okay. So those two things should be able to talk to each other. Okay. So let's go quit on that. S for shell prompt. Ping 10.0.10.1. And on this one, let's go quit shell prompt ping 10.0.10.2. They're definitely not talking to each other. Okay, so what generally that means is we need to reboot one or the other. So I'm going to reboot the second machine. So we'll go Control C there, Control D back to the main menu. Let's do a reboot. R for reboot and go yes. You should see some changes in the connectivity if they are actually connected. Okay, so it's not saying that that it's reachable from. So it's pushing it to the right card. Let's go shell prompt ping 10.0.10.1. Okay, so that'll run continuously. So what we'll do is we'll reboot the first one. So Control C, Control D, R for reboot, and go yes. So we're just doing a little bit of troubleshooting to make sure we've got actual connectivity between these two routers. Gets its IP addresses, and you can see that we're now pinging. Down here you can see it's pinging. So what we needed to do was reboot the internet router. So let's just go shell prompt on that and ping 10.0.10.2. And so it's pinging back now, so that's good. Control C on that. It's good to find out which one it was. I just took a guess the first time. Control D back to the menu. So Control C, Control D, back to the menu. Okay, so that's the first two. We know this has been rebooted and it's now working. Okay, so let's work on the next router, which is this one. Okay, so it's got the first card's plugged into switch 2, second card will be plugged into BO1 server, and the third network card will be plugged into BO1 clients. Okay, so we need a third network card in here. So let's add in a third network card. The first card is going to be plugged into an internal network called switch 2, S2. The second card, we're going to enable that. It's going to be plugged into an internal network called BO1 SRV server. And adapter 3, we're going to make that an internal network and call that BO1 clients. That'll do. And just make sure it's plugged in, the cable's plugged in, that's good. We'll go OK. So that's the 3 network cards. So let's start that up. Now remember, the first card's going to have 10.0.2.10. And then we've got internally, we've got 192.168.10.1 for that first card, which is actually ether 0.1. So this is ether 0.0, this is ether 0.1, this will be ether 0.2, and it's going to have a .129 because it's in that subnet there. Okay, we're ready, so we go I for IP manager. It gets a dynamic for the first ether 0.0, so we want to turn that off. So let's go H, ether 0.0, disabled with the D at the end. Didn't do that the first time. Okay, it doesn't have an IP address, so let's add an IP address to ether 0.0. It's going to be a 10.0.2.10 is our IP address. 255.255.255.0. And the gateway for this is also going to be this card here. So the gateway for this is to here, our internet service provider, so to speak. So if I go G for gateway, I'm going to go 10.0.2.1 is the default gateway. And so I need to change the Ethernet address on both ether 0.1 and 0.2 down here. So let's just go M for modify ether 0.1's address. So it's ETH01, and I need to modify that address, and it needs to be 192.168.10.1, and it's going to be 255.255.255.192, and it's up. Okay, so the third network card, which is going out to our switch here, it's got an IP address of 10.129. Okay, so let's go A to add to ETH02, IP address of 192.168.10.129, and the subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. Okay, so that sets up all of the IP addresses and the default gateway for the branch office 1 router. So let's quit out, go to shell prompt, see if we can ping our gateway. So let's go ping 10.0.2.1, and we're pinging from this card here to this card here. We could also ping across to here, so we're going to give that a go, 10.0.2. 10.10.2. So let's go ping 10.0.10.2, and we can ping from this card here across to this card here. That's fine. Control C. Can we ping to this card here, which was 1.62, I think. Let's go ping 192.168.1.62. Okay, so now we're pinging to this outside interface, the one that goes out, but we can't get to the internet as yet because we don't have NAT turned on here, so that won't get out. Yep, okay, Control C. Control D, back to the menu. So that's this router is now set up. So what we want to do is set up this last router. Again, we're going to need another network card, and we need to have them plugged into the correct way. So this needs to be to an internal network to switch to. And the cable is plugged in, that's good. We go to adapter 2. So this is going to be branch office 2 server, internal network. So BO2 server, and it's plugged in, that's good. Adapter 3, we enable it, internal network, and make this BO2 clients, and make sure the cable's plugged in, it is, and we go OK. So that one's ready to start, so let's start that machine up. So let's just go to internet's up there, head office is there, so let's put that one there, and then this one, we'll stick that just underneath, and then we've got this one here, which is what we're working on at the moment. So let's just go. Okay. Okay, I for IP manager. We need to turn off the dynamic IP address on ether00. So H for dynamic, ether00 is correct. It's disabled. So it doesn't have an IP address anymore. So let's add an IP address to it. So this is going to be 10.0.2.20, remembering that that's what this IP address here is. And it's a 255.255.255.0, so this is the /24 subnet. And we're going to put a default gateway in as well, so I'm going to press G for gateway, and it's 10.0.2.1, which is the IP address of this thing up here. And let's set the IP address of the next network card. Currently it's got a 192.168.3.1, so we want to modify that for ETH01. And we want to modify the first card's address. We want to modify that to 192.168.10.1. Okay. And the network mask needs to be a /26, so it's 255.255.255.192. And the status is up, that's correct. Okay, so now we're up to ether02, so we need to add an IP address to that one, so it's A for add, ETH02, and the IP address for that is down here, .129, 20.129. Oh, can you see what I've done wrong? On ether01 I've put a 10 address, not a 20 address, so I need to modify that one. Okay, because it's an IP address that's actually in the branch office 1 subnet, not in the branch office 2 subnet. So that was a bit of a mistake. Okay, we'll fix that. So we're now looking at the second interface. It's a .129 address. So its IP address is 192.168.20.129. And the IP address is 255.255.255.192. And we need to modify Ether01's address. So modify address for ETH01. The first address is the one we need to modify, and it's now 192.168.20.1. And the subnet mask is correct, and it is up. So now we've got the correct IP addresses and subnet masks. So now we need to just check to make sure that we can ping the right way. Okay, so we'll quit out of this menu. This is where having a diagram, even if it's a hand-drawn diagram like this with IP addresses on it and everything like that, allows you to troubleshoot so much more easily. So it's a good idea to have one of these. It's better off if you actually construct a proper diagram using you know, like Microsoft Visio or Draw.io online, you know, any of the proper network diagramming tools would make a much better diagram than this. The only advantage for me is it's color-coded. Okay, so let's do a check with ping. So S for shell prompt. We're on branch office 2 router, this one here. So let's make sure we can ping our gateway. So ping 10.0.2.1. And it pings our internet router. So let's ping 2.10. So that's pinging branch office 1 router. Let's ping 110.2, which is the head office router. So it pings that as well. So if I ping 192.168.1.62, that's the outgoing interface on the internet router going out to the internet. But of course I can't ping the internet. No pinging. Okay, Control C, Control D, back to the main menu. Okay, so what we've done at the moment is we've installed all 4 of these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install a workstation and I'm going to plug it in so we can actually set up NAT on all of these things. Okay, so that's the next thing. So I'm going to go as File, Import. Let's go to there and down to our OneDrive, VM resources, OVAs. I'm going to pick a Windows 10 sysprept. And next. I'll just leave it as Win10, that's quite fine. I do want to change this though to show Win10.vdi, and I need to click out of it, otherwise it has a little whinge. It's got 1 network card, which is all it needs, 2 gigabytes of memory. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change this down to 1536, so that's 1.5 gigabytes. How many cores you want to give doesn't really matter. I'm going to give it 4, but you know what, it doesn't matter so long as it's more than 1. Okay, the primary group, I do want to change this now. If I click the Get Well Medical Practice demo, so I'm going to put it into that group, and I'm going to generate a new MAC address. Imports the drivers of VDI, so go import. So this takes significantly longer than the 0 shells, because the 0 shells are only, you know, less than 400 megabytes, whereas this is 10 gigabytes. It's compressed. Actually, I think it's 12 gigabytes. It's compressed down to 6, the OVA file. So it'll take about I think once this gets up to about 25% or something like that, because I think the hard drive set to 50 gigabytes and we're using about 12 of it, so about 25%. So you'll find that once this gets to around about the 25% mark, it'll shoot up to 98% real fast. So it's not as long as it seems. It's always tedious waiting for it, though. Yep, all of a sudden 98, yep. Okay, so now we've got a Windows 10 machine. We just need to make sure it's plugged in the right place for us to do stuff. So, and give it the right IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into the head office switch. It's not going to get an IP address because we haven't got DHCP set up. But we'll see. We'll give it a static IP address. So that's going to be 130. So I'm going to give it like a 131 IP address. So 129 is this address. 130 is going to be this address. So I'll give this one a 131. And it's going to be a /26 subnet too. So let's make sure it's plugged into the correct network. So I think you can actually just do it here. Just click on this NAT, change that to an internal network, and it's going to be the head office clients switch. Okay, so let's start that up. We're going to give it a static IP address, and then we're going to web browse into this router here, set up NAT, then web browse into that router and set up NAT. So we'll do them all. I think we can do them all from one position actually. You've got to do them in order though, obviously, because this machine here should be able to ping the front network card of these. So once I've got NAT, this machine should be able to go out to ping things in the outside network once I've got NAT on, which means I should be able to get to the IP addresses of these two things as well. Okay. Now this Windows 10's been sysprepped, so it's going to ask me a few questions to start with. It is Microsoft after all, so it does take its time. Okay, so I've just followed the bouncing balls, and it's starting to install into Windows, which is what we want, what we need. There's a bit of a gap there, but it was just a matter of answering all the questions and follow the bouncing ball. And it's now up to the point of setting everything up. It'll come up with a sign in. The installation of Windows 10 is a bit tedious, but we get there in the end. Okay, one of the things I like to do here is to take out the graphics driver from VirtualBox, because when you're looking at this, it's got the sort of aero glass thing, which can be a bit of a nuisance. So I'm going to go up to the device manager, and on the display adapters, it's got the VirtualBox. What I want to do is I want to change that back to the standard Windows. Let me pick from available drivers. I'm going to go back to this basic display adapter. It's just as fast as the VirtualBox one. What it does show you though is that we've got the VirtualBox guest editions installed. So now when I click on here, I get a decent menu that's reasonable. Okay, so the thing we need here is to get an IP address. I'm going to right mouse click and open our network. Ethernet, change the adapter options. We've only got one network card here at the moment. Properties. We want to give it a static IP address. I'm going to turn off quality of service because that only limits the amount of bandwidth that our network card can use. We want all of it at the moment, so I'm also going to turn off IP version 6. It's going to leave IP version 4, and I'm going to give it a static IP address, which in this case I'm plugged into this switch here. Like I said, IP address of 131. So this is going to be 192.168.0.131, and our subnet mask is that .192.92, and our gateway is 192.168.0.129. Okay, we don't have a preferred DNS server at the moment. Oh, we could give it, 8.8.8.8. That'll do for the moment. That's out to the internet. Okay, so we've given it a static IP address. It's found a network, that's good. Okay, so what we want is a CMD, and let's pin that to the taskbar. So we've always got it. Okay, so ipconfig/all shows us our IP address and all that sort of stuff. We're going to ping our gateway, which is 192.168.0.129. So that means our head office router is responding, which means if we can ping that, then we can also web browse into it. So that's what we're going to do. Going to web browse into it. Helps if double tick it, Martin. Okay. It's not going to get there, which is fine. So just another tab, and we're going to go 192.168.0.129. It's not secure. We want to go advanced, continue to the unsafe website, and go admin, and the password is ZeroShell, which is the standard password for ZeroShell. and we're into it. So we're currently we're browsed from the workstation into the head office router. And so what we want to do is set up NAT on this first interface. So if we look at NAT, we want the very first interface to be NAT enabled and hit save. Okay. So we also want DHCP out on this this card as well, which is the sort of like fourth card. So I go to DHCP. I want to go new, and it's going to be on this third card here, the 128. Okay. So it's on this card here. The default gateway is going to be that. The range is going to be from, let's go from, well, it can't be 130 because 130 is going to be this card here. So let's call it from 131. So 192.168.0.131. And the end part is going to be before we get to the 192. So the broadcast address of the previous subnet is going to be 191. So the last usable IP address is 190. So let's go to 190, 192.168.0, because the 192 is the that's the network address of the fourth subnet in the /26 subnets. So the previous address is the broadcast address of the previous subnet, which is the one we're in here, the 128. So the 128 goes, the 64 IP addresses to the next one. So that's the subnet mask. That's the subnet mask. Sorry, that's the I think they call it the network address to the network address. So the previous one, 191, is the broadcast address for this network. And so the previous usable one, or 190, is the last usable address. So what we're doing is going from, we're keeping this address for static, we're keeping this address as static, and everything else is going to be dynamic in this subnet. Okay, so the DNS is not correct. The DNS server, I'm just going to put it as 8.8.8.8. Now later on we're going to have to change that, because what it will need to be is this is a DNS server here. So we could actually put it in 192.168.0.2 is going to be the DNS server. So we could probably put that in while we're at it. So let's put that in 192.168.0.2, and I'm going to put the 8.8.8 as the second one. That's it. Okay, we've got everything right. We're going to hit save. Okay, so now if I turn off the static that I've got for 131, it'll get a 131, but it'll be a dynamic address on this card. So let's try that. I'll out of that for the moment. Kill that. Right mouse click, properties, Ethernet, adapter options, on the network card, properties, IP version 4, properties, change this to dynamically. Let's get it dynamically. Go OK, close, close. It should come up with found a new network. ipconfig/all. Okay, so you can see that we've got DHCP enabled, auto configuration, and we've got an IP address of 131. And you can see we've got the two DNS servers out there. Okay, so we've got from our DHCP server that we just set up. So in here, this is our DHCP server that we just set up because we saved it and it worked. We've got an IP address here. What I want to do is see if I can ping further out. So because we've got NAT set up on the router, in here, we've got ether00 is NAT, which is this interface here, then I should be able to ping out of here to the external subnet. So let's just assume we can get all the way out to the internet, so let's try that. And the DNS should actually work as well. So let's just open up this and go ping 8.8.8.8. Well, it won't, and I know why. Control C. The reason is we've got NAT on here, but we don't have NAT on here. Okay, so can I get to this IP address? That's the important part, because then I'd be able to web browse it. So if I go ping 10.0.10.1, I can ping from here out to the internet router's IP address on that card there. So if I can do that, then I can also web browse into it and set up NAT on this. So let's go new tab. Let's go 10.0.2.1. Oh, sorry, it should have been 10.1, not 2.1. Make that at 10. 10.0.10.1. What it was actually doing was actually getting into this card here, so it was web browser. So that would have worked as well. Okay. We go advanced, and we go to, oops, it ran into a problem. Nice, I just blue screened Windows 10 and it's doing a reboot. Okay, let's start that again, shall we? Okay. Let's put that to one side a little bit so we can see. Okay. Okay, so we're back into it. We could ping that, so let's try it. It's probably trying to do a DNS resolution or something like that and had a dummy spit. Well, we'll see if it gets in this time. Okay, so let's open that. Let's not restore things. Let's go to 10.0.10.1. Advanced. And kill that. Let's go to unsafe. So now I'm actually web browsing into this internet router here. So admin and zero shell. Oops, I must have mistyped. Admin zero shell. Okay, so we're actually into the internet router now. So on the router, on the NAT, we're going to enable the ether00 interface and hit save. So what we've done is just turn NAT on here. And so we've got NAT on here and we've got NAT on here now. So can I get out to the internet? I should be able to. If I go images, let's go Fox. And I get foxes. Okay, so I'm here. I've gone through this router, and I got out to the internet. Okay, so that's all worked. So what I want to do now is get to these two routers, and I want to put NAT on those interfaces as well. Okay, so let's go 10.0.2.10, which is the interface on that other router, branch office 1 router. And let's get into that and type in admin and zero shell. Okay, so I'm now into this router over here using this interface, but when I put NAT on, I'll probably block myself out. So that'll be interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up DHCP on this interface first, and then I'll do NAT, because when I put NAT on, I'll actually block myself out of here unless I actually then plug into the back of it. So let's put on the DHCP on this interface here. So let's go DHCP. This is the third interface. Let's go new subnet, and it's going to be this 128 subnet, Ether02. We're going to go OK, and the range is going to be from 192.168.10 basically everything in that subnet can be. I'm not going to use the 130 in case we actually put a router in there later on to do the wirelessy type stuff. So let's make this 129 is the first, 130 will be the second interface. So let's make it from the third interface. So 131 to the 190 address that we had before, but let's make that a 10. 190. Okay, so this DNS is going to be correct. No, we're going to go to 0.2. Actually, what we should do is make it, we'll make this a DNS server as well. So what we'll do is, because we've got Active Directory and DNS over here, so the IP address of this thing is going to be 10.2. So this is .1, that'll also be the .2 address. So let's make this a 10.2. And we'll make the secondary address the 8.8.8.8. There we go. So this is not saved yet. So let's save it. So what we've done is we've set up DHCP on this interface here, ready for all of the clients later on. So later on we can take this off, plug it into there, and bingo, we'll get out to the internet straight away. So that won't be a problem. Okay, so now we can set up NAT on this first interface, which might block us out of here. But everything will be set up. If we then just go plug straight into the back, we'll be able to get back in again. Okay, so let's just set up NAT. Go to router, set up NAT on that first interface. And we're going to hit save. Now, the interesting part is, can I still get in and look at things? Yeah, I can at the moment, probably because I've got an established connection. I think if I disable the connection and came back in again, I'd have troubles getting in. Okay, so let's go to this interface here, so we can put NAT up on this interface. We'll do the same thing, we'll put DHCP on here as well. So let's just go new tab. Let's go 10.0.2.20. And we'll go advanced. And we'll go into the router. We'll type in admin and we'll type 0 shell. We'll hit login. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set up DHCP on this interface here, and then we'll set up NAT on the first interface. Let's go DHCP. Let's go new. We'll put it on the 20.128 subnet. We'll go OK. And the DNS is going to be 20.2, which is going to be the router that would be in here, and 8.8.8. And we need to set the range to be, make it 20.131. And this is going to be 20.190. 20.190. So that's our range. That's all our subnet. Mask. So it's just IP addresses. So we're giving it the range, default gateway, the 2 DNS servers, and that'll do it. So let's go save. Okay. And okay. Now we need to set up NAT on the front interface on this router here. So we need to on ether 00. So let's go NAT, and on ether 00 we send it in and go save NAT interfaces. Okay, so I'm going to kill all these. As you know, I can still get out to Foxes from where I am here. I'm going to plug into one of these two routers and see if I can get out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Devices and down to Network and change my network connection. So I'm no longer at the head office clients. I'm going to go into the branch office 1 clients. So I'm going to plug into this switch here, and I should get a new IP address. You can see it's picked up a new network. Yep. So let's go ipconfig/all. So now you can see that I've got an IP address in the 10.131. So I'm in the 10 subnet, got the right subnet mask, gateways. Can I ping out to the internet? I should be able to just double click here and go out to the internet. Okay. So I should be able to go images. Okay, we don't want to get Foxes. Let's go iSetters. Okay, so here I am in the branch office. I can get out to the internet. That's fine. Okay, let's kill that, kill that. So now let's plug into branch office 2. So we change our network connections and we change it to branch office 2 clients. There's branch office 2 clients. So now we're plugged into this switch here. We'll get a new IP address, and you can see we've found a new network. So that means the DHCP server has given us a new IP address. And we'll be able to see that by doing an ipconfig/all. And you can see that now I've got an IP address in the 20 subnet, and I should be able to get out to the internet. Yep, I'll go to images. We'll pick a different one. Velomobile. Oops, what have I done? Velomobile, there we go. Okay, so in branch office 2, we can get out to the internet as well. Okay, so what we've got here now is the core of our system set up, where we've got NAT on all the right routers. We can plug our workstation into any of the client switches and get out to the internet. So this ends the first video, which is just setting up the core of our network. The second video will concentrate on putting in some of the servers in place, and then getting things to join the domain and all that sort of stuff. So we'll look at putting in domain functionality in our next network video. Okay, so we'll finish there, and I'll see you next time.